and shiny.
Thanks, mister. But we can always be huger and shinier.
You too can also be as huge or as shiny as you want. Or not. Let me just say right at the outset, I've put a lot into this next video. Scrupulous research, hours of combing through articles and research. I already said research. The scientific literature on the maximum amount of reps that you should go through, that you should do in order to build the most amount of muscle, to maximize every last push, every last contraction. I've written and rewritten the drafts. I've thought again and again and again. I have spent nights, sleepless nights, trying to think of what is the best way to explain this to make you think about working out in a totally different way. So please appreciate what you're about to watch, because I've kind of poured my whole heart and soul into this. Not really. I thought of this while I was scooping concrete out of the back of a truck, and I thought that'd be a good thing to talk about. I'm going to talk about that today. Not to say that I haven't done any research. I mean, I've done plenty of, I've got experience training people. I have my own personal experience. Reading, I can read. I actually do like to read. I don't know why I said that like I was being sarcastic, but no. When it comes to reps and how many reps are going to maximize muscle growth, the real answer is, also the fact that I did just think of this while I was scooping concrete out of the back of the truck. Forgive me if it's a little bit discombobulated. I might be jumping around just a bit if I haven't thought of the best way to approach it. I'm going to talk about the different rep ranges. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each rep range, which rep range would be best for you and your personal goals. That's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about is when you ask how many reps should I do? We've already established that, I want to be working out 2 or 3 times a week, maybe 4 if you're really into it. And we've talked about the proper mindset you need to have. Now we're talking about reps. How many reps? How do you know you've done enough reps? How do you know if you should do more? And the answer to that, the first answer to that is, well, it depends. What are your goals? Is your goal to be a big, giant, shiny bodybuilder? Or are you looking for something a little more modest, a little more down to earth? And I think that's most people. In fact, I would fall into that category. Not that it, wouldn't be cool to be super huge. Personally, I think it looks kind of goofy. This is just a personal thing. If I'm looking a little shiny right now, it's because it's hot outside and I can't turn the AC on because it interferes with the sound on my phone. So I'm trying not to do that. I might roll down my windows every so often to try and cool myself off. But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna look shiny through this video. Don't mind that. It just enhances the glare off of the top of my head. So, rep ranges. What are your goals? What do you want? Do you like the bodybuilder look? Do you just want to get into a consistent lifting routine that's not too taxing on your mind or your body, but it's still going to give you results? We'll go over all that. Now, as far as the rep ranges go, anything from 1 to infinity will get you results. But I wouldn't recommend going to infinity. The more reps you do, the more it turns into cardio. Here's something you want to keep in mind as you're lifting when you're trying to decide on rep ranges. You want to be getting close to failure. You don't have to get to absolute failure, but close to failure. So, let's say that I'm on the bench press. There we go. Let's say that I'm on the bench press. There will come a day where I won't have to adjust the camera. I'll just get it right the first time. But that day is not today. So let's say you're on the bench press and you do 10 reps on the bench at, weight doesn't matter. Let's say 100 pounds. You do 100 pounds on the bench press, 10 reps, up and down. A rep is a full range of motion of the exercise. And you could have done like 20 more. It was really, really easy. You probably should have done more, or you should have upped the weight. And there's merits to both. We'll talk about when you might want to up the weight as opposed to upping the reps. But in this case, you did 10 reps. You could have done a bunch more. That might not be good enough to put on substantial amounts of muscle. Maybe a little bit. You know, if you're a beginner lifter, you're just getting into it, you can do almost anything and you'll build muscle. Your body just naturally adapts to whatever stimulus you put onto it. It's adaptation. You're adapting. So your body's adapting. But, you know, again, if you want to do what's going to be optimal, what's really going to build muscle and make you the strongest, the fastest, you want to be getting close to failure. So, ideally, let's say you're on the bench press, you do 10 reps, you're feeling good, but you could have done a lot more. Let's up the weight. You did 100, let's do 130. Let's put on 30 pounds because we need to get enough weight on there that it's hard enough for you to do. Now you do 10 reps, but instead of, you know, feeling like you could have done possibly 20 more, now you're like, ooh, that got a lot harder. I think I could have maybe done 3 or 4 more. Oh, okay, let's put on even more weight, even more. We're still doing 10 reps. We're sticking to the 10 rep range. And we'll talk about why 10 reps in a minute. But right now we're just focusing on the getting close to failure concept. Let's put on 10 more. Ooh, I'm getting shinier. Let's put on 10 more pounds. Now we're lifting 140 pounds for 10 reps. You get done with the 140 pounds and now you say, holy cow, I barely got that 10th one up. Now we're building muscle. Now we're in optimal range. That's where you want to be. Actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be barely one more. Let's say you could have gotten maybe 2 more reps, maybe even 3 more. Here's the idea though. You want to be getting close to failure. That's where the building comes. Have you heard the phrase, you don't grow in your comfort zone and there's no comfort in your growth zone? It's kind of like that. You got to get a little uncomfortable. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you, the people that I've worked with who they don't really see results, and it's mostly because I can't push them. They don't like the uncomfortable feeling that comes with pushing their bodies. And so they make very little progress. They make a little bit. Again, it's never useless. But you make very little progress, very slow, and eventually it just stops, because if you're just doing the same weights every single week, not trying to up the weights in any meaningful way or change up the exercises, well, you're not going to make much progress. So that's the first principle to keep in mind. Whatever rep range you choose to do, you have to be getting close to failure within that rep range. And then from there, it's kind of up to you, whatever rep range you want to do. Now there's pros and cons. There's the lower rep ranges, like the 1 to 5 range, and then there's the middle, 6 to 10, and then there's the higher ones, 10 to 15 reps per set. We haven't gotten into sets yet. But I'll talk about the pros and cons of each rep range. So, or why certain people train the way they do. Let's say you're more concerned with strength. You just want to get as strong as possible. You want to be able to lift one weight, one time, heavy as possible. You don't really care about feeling the burn or getting the pump. You just want to see how much you can lift. We have a word for these people. They're power lifters. They're usually enormously strong. More often than not, they're kind of fat. Mass moves mass. Not all the time, but they're usually not slim. They're not slim guys. These are big guys who can lift a lot of weight, whether that's on a bench press or a squat or a deadlift. Big guys, big weights, and they live in the 1 to 5 range. Very low reps, very high weight. This is great for building strength. And building strength is, well, that's good. It's good to be strong. And it's fun to see how strong you can get. And here's another pro. It's easier on you mentally and on your body. You know, the other option would be to do the mid-range, 6 to 10. This is where most basic weightlifters would be. That might be where you want to be, and we'll talk more about that. But first, let's talk about the other extreme, 10 to 15, the opposite of the bodybuilder, the opposite of the powerlifter, which is the bodybuilder. I gave it away before I actually got to it. Sorry, spoiler alert, we're getting into bodybuilders now. These are the guys who care less about how much they can lift and more about how they look. And there's a different protocol for that. You can get really strong and push a lot of weight without actually getting significantly bigger or looking really strong. You can do that. Powerlifters do it all the time. I just said, powerlifters oftentimes, they look kind of fat. They're just big guys. Bodybuilders care about their physiques. They want the muscles to actually bulge and get visually bigger. It's all aesthetics when it comes to bodybuilding. And there's value in that too. Here's the difference. I'm not going to get too much into all the sciencey jargon because I can't. I'm kind of a dumb bunny. But this is just to give you a basic idea of what's going on. Powerlifting, where you're just lifting as much weight as possible, you are building some muscle, but mostly the muscle cells themselves are growing, expanding, getting bigger, and you're learning how to activate more of those, more of the muscle neurons or something like that. Any exercise scientists out there? I'm sorry, I know you're cringing. The bodybuilders, on the other hand, they're also strong, but they're less concerned with the weight itself and more concerned with what it feels like in their muscles. So the bodybuilders, when they get that big, bulky look, that's less the muscle cells getting bigger and more of all the liquid and stuff in between the muscle cells expanding and getting bigger. So that's how you get with the bodybuilders. I don't know, Google it or ChatGPT it. It is 2025. Bodybuilders end up having a bigger, more muscular look, while powerlifters, while they don't look as big and muscular, although they do usually look big, they just don't look as aesthetically muscular. They're really strong. There's merits to both. There's merits to both. Powerlifters are really strong and they don't look terrible, but they usually don't look as good as a bodybuilder. Bodybuilders are really strong. They look great, but they're not as strong as a full-time powerlifter. So it just kind of depends on what you're going for. For the average person, that difference really only matters if you're gonna go hard into one of those categories. If you plan on actually competing and getting really good at one of those, that's where it's gonna matter. That's when you have to decide, okay, what am I gonna spend 90% of my time doing? For the average weightlifter, you're gonna do everything. You want to work in all the different ranges. Not all at once, obviously. You spend about 3 or 4 months working in a 6 to 8 range in your lifts. That's going to get you good results. And then you want to spend maybe 3 to 4 months working in the 10 to 15 range. That'll get you great results. And then go on a really heavy powerlifting streak where you do 1 to 5 for the next 3 to 4 months. Basically, you're always changing up your workouts and making your body adapt to new exercise protocols. You ever heard people talk about muscle confusion? It's become a meme online. You'll see a guy go for the bench press, but then he confuses his muscles and jumps on the lat pull down. It's very funny. But this is what muscle confusion actually is. Every so often you switch up your workouts and make your body readapt to a different training protocol. And you can get great results doing that. So, here's another reason why you might want to go with the lower reps or the mid-range reps. With the mid-range reps, you have well, let's see. I mentioned before at the beginning that powerlifting is easier on your mind. It's easier mentally. It's easier on the body than in powerlifting, the super high reps. And also, you want to be getting close to failure to see, optimal muscle growth. Well, figuring out where failure is much harder at higher reps. you know if you can lift 4 reps and you can't get the 5th one up. Like, that's not hard to figure out. You know when you've run out of strength. But when you're working in higher reps, what you're going to find is that it burns a lot more. It burns bad. If you're a full-time bodybuilder, you like the burn. You savor the burn. It gives you a pump, and you love the pump. You love feeling that swollen feeling in your muscles. But it is harder. You're pushing a lot more weight. You're not pushing as many weight per reps, but you are pushing more reps at a lower weight, which comes out to more overall weight throughout the workout. And that can be the net effect. If you do the math, that means you just pushed out a lot more volume, and your body, it's going to be a lot more tiring on your body and on your mind. And it's harder to tell when you've actually gotten close to failure. Were you actually close to muscular failure, or did you just stop because it was burning and you wanted the pain to stop? That's what you have to think about when you're working at these higher reps. Are you the type of person who likes the pain and you can push through the pain? If you're not, you might not want to be working in a 10 to 15 range, or at least not a lot of time. Like I said, toy around with all of them. But you might want to spend most of your time in the 6 to 10 range. You're a basic bodybuilder, basic weightlifter. You're not going for anything too extreme. Now, here's a con of the powerlifting regimen, going 1 to 5. The higher your weight goes, the smaller your margin of error gets. So if you're working with lighter weights for more reps, you can, you should still have good form, but you can get away with a little bit of cheating. You can get away with a lot more. If you're working at super high weights, putting out maximal strength, again, we're in like the 1 to 5 range. Let's say you're doing 3 reps. Like I said, your margin of error gets very small. You have to have pinpoint form and technique, or you're much more likely to hurt yourself. So if you were to go into a heavy powerlifting protocol, you'd have to, it'd be good to film yourself while you're doing it, have a coach watch you, have somebody who knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about watch you, not your dumb buddy from the office who also doesn't lift very much. Oh yeah, your back looks pretty straight. It's all right. Yeah. That might not be the best. So if you do want to go more into powerlifting, just remember that form has to be really, really good, with or without the belt. I know the sainted belt. Everybody thinks if as long as you have the belt on, you'll be fine. I don't wear a belt. My form, even if I did, it wouldn't matter. Your form needs to look basically the same with or without the belt. The belt it's supplementary. It makes you stronger. The belt makes you stronger. It doesn't save you from injury if your form sucks. So you gotta have good form. Now, she was pretty. Now that you've learned about rep ranges, decide what rep ranges you want. For a basic weightlifter, somebody who just wants to get into weightlifting, they're getting into the gym, here's my recommendation. 3 sets of 6 reps. Again, you're just barely over that powerlifting margin. And again, it's not like an exact, it's not like if you're doing 5, you're powerlifting. If it's over 5, it's no longer power. It's not that simple. There's a lot of gray area, but 6, that's low enough that it's not going to be super terribly difficult on your central nervous system, on your mind, mentally, on your body. But it's enough that you can learn where you're kind of where you're working. Where can you get? Where is your point of failure? How close can you get to failure? How far can you push yourself but still be within a relatively safe range? So 6 reps. And if you want, you can up it to 8 reps. Or if you want, you can do a really basic 10 rep, 3 by 10 protocol. That's a classic one. Most people are working within the 8 to 10 range. No odd numbers. I don't know why. Well, actually, you can have odd numbers. You can do you can do sets of 3. You can do sets of 5. Do not do sets of 7. There's no reason for that other than it's just not done. It's just not done. Don't do it. If anybody at the gym catches you doing sets of 7, you will be the laughing stock of the gym. Remember that. Be ashamed of yourself if you're doing that. And let's see. I think that's all I got for today. Hey, if you want to find me, well, stay tuned for my little video, of which I have specially prepared for anybody who needs a little extra training right now. Thank you for listening. Hey, tell me, have you ever heard someone say something like, oh, fitness isn't everything? Don't listen to that communist gobbledygook. Take pride in your body, take pride in your fitness, and let me help you along the way. Follow me at American_Fitnocrat on Instagram. And if you'd like some personalized coaching, DM me.